So, hello. So we're going to get started. We are Busboys and Poets, as many of you obviously know, and of course poetry is in our name. And we had, like I said, an incredible poetry program last night. And one of the poets that really stood out, all of them stood out. They were quite amazing. One of the poets that stood out is Omar Abed. And Omar got up and read a poem that was so beautiful that I went up to him afterwards and I said, we need you to open up for tonight's event. So he was so gracious to be able to show up today. I want to bring up to the stage Omar Abed.
All right. Oh, I think that song is it. Right?
Is it on that?
Now is it on?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, but hey, we're gonna need you to speak way up. Everybody
Yeah, just go right into the microphone.
Theater voice.
All right.
Yes.
All righty then. Okay. Hi everybody. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Omar Abed. Andy, thank you for asking me to come today. I am Palestinian American, and generally I write children's books. That's not what I'm going to read right now. I wrote this poem at the beginning of all of this nonsense. Well, we talk about the beginning, but I wrote it in November when we were kind of all waiting for when the violence in Gaza would wind down. At that point, we were talking a lot about what the people in Gaza needed. Things like water, food, electricity, like boring things. So I started to think about what the people in Israel needed to cease the violence and what the US needed to hear in order to stop funding it and supporting it. So this is a poem called What You Need. What more do you need? I mean, could I offer you a word? There has to be something I can say you haven't heard. No, what could I say that hasn't already been said? Instead, is this what you need? One more child then? Or maybe a woman, a sister, a brother. Oh, an orphan child calling out for its mother. Or here, take 10 more lives, 100, 1,000, bury them so deep you can't even count them. Then here, take their village, this whole neighborhood, this town, their whole culture. Then maybe you could bomb the entire nation, from river to sea. Do it until they're all dead or they flee. Then consume the country and all its resources. And finally, after some nuanced discourses, condemn what you did. Retract. Mourn the losses. Show you the tone through posthumous causes. I mean, the world is forgotten and you've all been acquitted, so sit back. Relax, you finally did it. Except, time keeps marching toward this day when God will bring the martyrs to say, look what they did to us. Witness our slaughter. And every orphan child, mother, and father bears witness against you and the crimes you committed. Hell's gates are open, and at last you're admitted. So now you may take your bow, for at last you succeeded. You took what you wanted, and got what you needed. Thank you.
Shout out DC. Look at the energy in this room today. This is a Monday night, and we're out here in Arlington. Who would have thought? Thank you, Busboys and Poets, for hosting all of us, bringing this community together, a time of healing, a time of reflection, a time of sisterhood, a time of community, a time of humanity. So I am so grateful to be here with you all. My name is Isra Shakir, as Andy mentioned. I'm a senior campaign manager at Amnesty International, and I'm here in my own personal capacity as an activist and as a Syrian American Muslim woman who has been taught by my sister friend, Linda Sarsour, to always be unapologetic, be bold, be loud, and be who you are, and never ever change who you are for anyone. So it's an honor to be here, an honor to host her, an honor to have a conversation with her. She has a lot to say, and I know if you've been on social media, we are all feeling the same type of way. So what better space for her to come and feel like she can heal and be in community than with you all. So we're gonna have Linda come up here, give some opening remarks, and then I'll be back and ask her some questions, and we will definitely have time for an audience questions. Linda Sarsour, come on up, our favorite activist. Need no introduction. I love you for life.
Use the wired microphone and give that back to her. Thank you.
Okay, you got it, Andy.
Whatever Andy says, I'm going to do. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. May peace and blessings be upon you all. And I just want to say thank you, Andy. Thank you for every space that you have opened for our people. Thank you for creating safe space for us to be our unapologetic selves. Thank you for creating space where we don't have to work too hard to be unapologetic, where we could just lay our shoulders down just a little bit. Because many of you know in every space that we have to enter in this country, it is hard that we have to resist against those who do not want us to be unapologetic about who we are. So to come to Busboys today, for me, I have nothing to contribute to all of you. You are here because you're already in this. You are here because you already care. I'm here because I want to bear my own heart of what it means to be a Palestinian American right now. And not just a Palestinian American, but a Palestinian American organizer. Sisters and brothers, I've been organizing for over 22 years, and you have seen me on every front line. You show me a community that is hurt and harmed, and I will be outside. I have been at the US-Mexico border. I have went as far as Turkey during an earthquake. So when I say I'm about to be outside, you tell me where in the world to be outside, and I'll be outside. I just came back from Egypt like 2.5 weeks ago. And throughout my organizing career, which has been my entire adult life, I have seen a lot of pain, and I've seen trauma, and I've often lived trauma through others. What I never thought I would experience as a Palestinian American is the genocide of my people on live stream. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Listen, the Palestinian people are not the first to experience genocide. Cambodia, Darfur, Rwanda, Bosnia. I could sit here for days and name atrocities that have happened and continue to happen across the world. The difference is we are watching it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So when you watch this genocide happen on your smartphone, you're heartbroken. You're horrified about what's happening. You know what Palestinian Americans do? We screenshot the video and we start zooming in to see if we recognize people in those videos. So imagine being a Palestinian American organizer that not only wants to organize around the human rights issue that I would be organizing around even if I weren't Palestinian, but I have to organize through trauma and through pain and through fierce opposition that is swift. My story is the story of many people in this room. My parents are Palestinian immigrants from the West Bank. And my parents made a decision to immigrate to the United States of America so that I don't have to be born under a military occupation. So my parents made that decision. And they left their siblings and their parents and everything that they loved to make that sacrifice so that I and my siblings could be born in this land, the land of the free. So you better believe that I'm going to make my parents' journey worth it to this country. My parents did not sacrifice for me as a Palestinian American so that I could be silent in this country. So when you see me fight for my people, that is my responsibility that I bore on myself for the sacrifices that my parents and my grandparents made. We live in a country country where it is controversial to say free Palestine. We live in a country where opposition believes that they can define what I mean by saying free Palestine. Or when we say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Sisters and brothers, it's very simple. And I hate that we have to explain these things. And that it causes people to think twice about saying or doing certain things because we worry about what people who don't and are not invested in our liberation believe. Of course we mean from the river to the sea. From the military occupation of the Palestinian people on the west bank of the Jordan River, to the Palestinians who live within the state of Israel as second and third class citizens, and all the way to the Mediterranean Sea and the people under siege in the Gaza Strip. So when I say from the river to the sea, I darn believe it's from the river to the sea, and nobody will take what we mean and our intention away from us. I will not cower to opposition to define for me what I mean by my cause of liberation, and neither should you. We live in a country where the President of the United States of America is aiding and abetting a genocide. This is not my opinion. This is not my observation. This is facts. For any of you here who are involved in any other social justice issue, any other human rights issue, if you are a woman and care about Roe versus Wade, if you are someone in this room who cares about immigrants and immigration reform, you care about voting rights, you care about reparations, you care about all the issues, and there's a lot of them. Our president figured out how to bypass Congress twice to sell weapons to the state of Israel, but couldn't figure out how to bypass Congress to codify Roe, or to pass some immigration reform, or to expand voting rights in America. How long are the American people going to allow both parties to continue to gaslight our communities? I'm sick and tired of it. And at some point, voters got to draw the line. And me, I got to draw the line at genocide. And people are gaslighting me right now by saying to me, Linda, you got to be careful. Because what you're saying is, if this one's bad, what about Donald Trump? And I just want to make sure we're all on the same page in this room. You don't got to patronize me or lecture me about it. I sued Donald Trump the first week in office. I was the first lawsuit against the Donald Trump administration. And I put my name on it. I protected folks who were impacted by the Muslim ban that didn't want to use their own names. I put my name on it. That lawsuit was called Sarsour versus Trump. I organized for 4 years under that administration to the detriment of my safety and the detriment of my health. So don't tell me about no Donald Trump. I know that Donald Trump is a fascist. I know that he's bad for marginalized people. And as a marginalized person, I know that he's bad for me and my community. But I could say that Donald Trump is a fascist and shouldn't be in power, and I could also say that Joe Biden is aiding and abetting genocide. I could also criticize Democrats and those in this administration, and you will not allow me and put me in a situation where you make me choose. Because truth-telling gotta happen everywhere. Yep. And we haven't told the Democratic Party the truth in the way that they need to hear it. So whatever happens in this election is not gonna be my fault. And it ain't gonna be your fault, and it won't be the fault of marginalized people across this country. Yeah. It will be a fault, and the fault only of this administration if they don't get their house in order quick. And I'm talking like tomorrow. Because we have no time. You know, one thing that I'll say to folks in this room is that speaking the truth is worth it. It's worth it every time. And there's a lot of people in our movements right now, and I'm gonna be that old lady one day because I'm a mentee of the late, incredible Harry Belafonte. And I dream that God gives me that long life where I could sit around like Harry Belafonte and everybody's just real quiet and you just listen to every word that I'm saying. And I hope that I get to live that long. And I'm going to tell you about all the progressives that were quiet, the ones that were silent, the ones that were worried about losing funding, the ones willing to sell their integrity and credibility in our social justice movements. If you can't say ceasefire, I'm not even telling you to go outside and say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be. If you can't say end the bloodshed, then you don't get to call yourself progressive, you don't get to call yourself nothing. What you are is useless and worthless and showed us who you are loyal to when it ain't to the people and it ain't to our movements. But I'm not going to be too divisive today. I'm going to wait my turn when I'm an old lady and you all can come back to Busboys and Poets when I'm old. Me and Andy are going to be so old. And I'm going to tell you all about them. I might write a book about them too at some point. But I came here because I wanted to tell you all that I have been heartbroken. Like my heart is shattered. I don't even know if my heart is ever going to be whole again. And my whole perspective on organizing has changed. Because we're all in evolution. We're not ever going to be the same people. And I've organized in a particular kind of way. But once I have seen and witnessed the direct personal impact of a genocide against my own people, take it all. Take everything that I have. And what I realized is the more truth that I have spoken, the more blessings that have come to me. Because telling the truth, my sisters and brothers and family that's in this room is worth it. And the people of Gaza, let me tell you about the people of Gaza before I bring Isra back here. These incredible, I don't even know, sometimes I don't even want to call them human because they're far beyond the incredibleness of any human in this world. And I'm not just saying that because they're my people. These people have bore their hearts to the world. They have held up their dead babies to the world. They have lost everything. Not only those that they love, but things that we take for granted. Imagine your whole house bombed and things of sentimental value, things passed down from generation to generation. Imagine the entire education system devastated in Gaza. Churches and mosques, our artifacts, our history, our lineage, destroyed by an occupier. And these incredible people have shown you patience and resilience and compassion in ways that I've never seen before. These are people who mothers will see children orphaned and their initial instinct is to pick up other mothers' children and say, you don't gotta worry about them, they're my babies now. And many of those children orphaned, the ones you're watching, they might have already been orphaned since the last war. So now they're re-orphaned for the second or for the third time. Have you watched those journalists in Gaza who will drop their camera so they can go help pull people out of ambulances, who will tend to the sick when they have no medical training? Have you watched those physicians that have been told you got an opportunity to get out of there? And they respond by saying, who will serve my patients? I am no more honorable with the degrees that I have to evacuate and leave these people who need me right now. And many of those very doctors that said those things publicly that you've watched have been massacred. They no longer are here with us today. So the people of Gaza have become a test of our humanity. Because there got to be a bigger purpose here. I cannot imagine that 30,000 people have been slaughtered in vain, my friends. That's not going to be their story, and I will not allow that to be their story. So where do we go from here? I heard today that the state of Israel is proposing a up to 2 month ceasefire. That's what they're proposing. With, of course, the agreement that Hamas release all hostages. And of course, as you know, the previous agreement was that you release all of our hostages and you stop bombarding Gaza, and then we can talk. So we don't know what's going to come of that, because we know the response is going to be, we'll release your hostages for all of our hostages that are in Israeli prisons right now. And that's important, because let me tell you a little bit about the American people, and you are part of those American people. And so excuse me, I feel a little uncomfortable right now. Something that has really bothered me about this entire genocide, I'm just going to say this as a Palestinian, and this is also to Palestinians too, so Palestinians, you're not off the hook on this one. I want you to be just as uncomfortable. Why does it take dead bodies for people to be outside? Why do you need entire neighborhoods in Gaza razed to the ground? Why do you need every university in Gaza to be literally rubble right now? Why does it require 30,000? And God knows it's more, because we don't know the exact number of those that have been massacred. Why do you need videos of children with no limbs and parents crying over their children and men digging in the rubble for those that they love? Why do we require bloodshed to be outside for the Palestinian people? These are people who have been under a brutal military occupation for 75 years and under siege in Gaza for 17 years. Why? And so now we're hearing ceasefire, and I'm watching this Al Jazeera announcement float online. And I'm thinking to myself, well, here we go. People see ceasefire, and does that mean that you hear that there's going to be a ceasefire? What does that mean? Does that mean that people go home? Does that mean that it's good, we're all good now? That they're going to just stop bombing Gaza so the people of Gaza just go back to where they were before October 7th? The question for us in our movements right now is, where are you going to be the day after the ceasefire? Where are you after the ceasefire? Because I don't want to ever be here ever again. And if we allow the people of Gaza to go back to siege, to go back to a life where they were deprived of basic human life, then what you're asking for is this to happen again. And I will not, and I already don't forgive some people, but I absolutely will not forgive anyone that allows this to ever happen, not only to the Palestinian people, but to any people. And so the work starts not to get a ceasefire. That's not the work. If you all thought the ceasefire was the work, that's not the work. The work is the day after the ceasefire. The work is to end the military occupation of the Palestinian people. The work is to end the siege on Gaza. And the work is to support the plight of the Palestinian people to what a free Palestine means to them, not to you. Because we got a lot of people that go outside on the television and start telling people what Palestine's supposed to be and what it's supposed to look like. The privacy of their own homes, from the towers of the Ivy League. You just got to get the occupation ended and lift that siege on Gaza. The Palestinian people are some of the most brilliant human beings in the world. We have, per capita, probably more degrees than anybody has in the world. These are inventors and scientists and academics. These are political scientists. Trust me, they know what a free Palestine is supposed to look like. And I promise you that free Palestine to the Palestinian people is liberation for all people. Because the Palestinian people have already shown you their solidarity with black people in America, their solidarity with the Syrian people. Anytime that there's been a cause for justice, the Palestinian people have rose up to show solidarity. So when we say free Palestine, our movement for freedom in Palestine is inclusive. Our opposition is exclusive. Our opposition is discriminatory. Our opposition looks at us as lesser value. That's not who the Palestinian people are. And so my challenge to all of us is to sit home tonight and say to yourself, let me ask myself that question. What am I going to do the day after a ceasefire? And I hope that you are supporting Palestinian-led organizations, that you continue to raise your voice for the Palestinian people post a ceasefire, that you continue to hold Democrats, Republicans, and everybody accountable when it comes to the ways in which they decide to make policy when it comes to the Palestinian people, that you elect people who, when they say they believe in social justice and human rights, that includes the Palestinian people, and that you go against those that do not include the Palestinian people, resources, your money, and your platforms. And for those of you in academia, that's a whole other fight that I want to have all on its own. That's like a separate movement for me right now. If we want to maintain a democracy, the democracy can't just be at the ballot box. The democracy in America has to be in academia. And if we cannot, in academia, center Palestinian voices and have a free exchange of ideas for our young people, if we are not going to allow college students to actually listen to different perspectives and have them come up with their own conclusions, then democracy will always be in big trouble. Because universities are supposed to be birthing the next generation of leaders in this country. And if they are going to be limited in their perspectives of understanding the plights of people all over the world, we are in big, big, big trouble. So if you are an alum of any college campus, monitor their social media. Monitor the way that they are treating Palestinian solidarity activists and Palestinian groups. Express your concern to them. Pull donations when they are not acting in the way that they are. Organize other alum, because our young people deserve our protection on those college campuses. We cannot allow money to be what is pushing agendas on college campuses. If the opposition wants to organize, they're welcome to organize. Bring your speakers, organize your perspectives. But we should be allowed to organize ours, and our young people should be able to do that without fear, without intimidation, and without harassment. And so, I say that to say we got a lot of work to do. And I'm exhausted. Somebody was asking me where I was coming from, and that was yesterday, and I don't even remember where I was. The world is a blur to me. But you know what? If I could get up every day and organize through my own trauma, if I could organize every day from a place of deep pain, all of us can. Because there are a lot of marginalized people in this country that get up every day and they organize through their trauma. And they organize through their pain. And guess what? We are all we got. And this government has shown us, not just for Palestinians, but all marginalized people, we're all we got. And if we don't stand with one another, if we don't organize with one another, if we don't defend one another, guess what? I don't know who you're counting on, but the only people I count on is you and me. And that's all I got. And I want you to know that's the only hope that I have in the darkness of this world, that there are still good people that are willing to go outside, and there are still good people that are saying, I'm willing to say the truth regardless of the consequences. And I'll end by saying this. We just came off of a 1-week anniversary of honoring Dr. Martin Luther King. And this is where the progressives get me really upset. Because when I die, and let's just hope it's after a long time, I need you all to have my back. And here's what I mean by that. I hope that when I die that you do not have people all the way on the far right to the far left saying, wow, that lady was an icon. She was a human rights, she was amazing. I need people to say she was controversial. I need to say that woman said the truth, and I want people to say I didn't like her. I opposed her. Because there is no way, sisters and brothers, that we could live in a world where people all the way on the far right to the far left think Dr. Martin Luther King was amazing. It just makes absolutely no sense. And let me tell you why. Because people don't want to remember all Dr. King. So the point here is remember all of me, because I was spicy and controversial, and I'm proud of it. When Dr. King when Dr. King was assassinated, people forgot this part. Because people say, oh, civil rights legacy organizations will say, we picked up the mantle of Dr. King. We are moving in the path that the civil rights movement laid out for us. Forgetting that when you pick up a mantle or you pick up the baton or you are in a race, you get the baton from the last person in the last spot that they were at. You know, the last spot that he was at before he got assassinated was standing up against this country and opposing the Vietnam War. That's where the baton was. Dr. King made the connection between militarism and racism. He was standing up against the military-industrial complex, and he said, no, I will not support a war that is killing some brown people all the way over there. I'm not going to do that. And guess what? His white allies, they were like, listen, my friend, you were cute when you were organizing for voting rights and organizing for black people. I was with you there. Now you went a little too far for me, so I'm not only going to walk away from you, I'm also pulling my money. And there's a documentary that I want you all to watch tonight when you get home. Sit and watch this. It's on YouTube, so it's easy. You have no excuses. It's called King in the Wilderness. And it's a documentary about the last 18 months of Dr. King's life. Manic depression, anxiety, isolation, losing friends, allies walking away from him. So this work is not easy, and it wasn't easy for Dr. King even before his allies walked away from him. There's always sacrifice in this work. And Dr. King could have said, you know what, I made a mistake. Maybe I'm not that well informed. Maybe I didn't really know too much about the Vietnam War. Maybe I shouldn't have said what I said. But Dr. King went to the grave opposing the Vietnam War. So if you claim to be part of a legacy of picking up the mantle from Dr. King, then you would be against militarism. And you would be standing against this war that is happening right now. You would be standing against this administration that's not only using your taxpayer dollars, but to be corrupt and go around Congress for a genocide that is against mostly women and children in Gaza, instead of doing the things that we need him to do right now for the American people and for all those that reside here. So I honor Dr. King by picking up that mantle of being pro-black and fighting for black liberation, and fighting for marginalized people and expansion of voting rights, and being against militarism. Because it's all connected, my sisters and brothers. And if we're not going to continue to connect those dots, we will continue to lose, just like we've been losing for a long, long, long time in this country. So thank you all for hearing my little therapy session, my little mentoring session here. And I'm going to invite my sister. It's my back.
I feel like she covered it all, so I'm like, where do we even go? What do we say? Let's first talk about the intersectional movement that we've been seeing this time around Palestinian liberation. We were talking earlier today around the different communities that are standing in solidarity, many of which are represented in this room, I believe, outside of the Palestinian, Muslim, Arab, the typical people think, and people continue to assume. Linda, what has your experience been working on so many different movements, so many different social justice inflection points, and seeing how community comes together in solidarity? What's your reflection on what's happening right now within the intersectional movement for Palestine?
I just want to say that I'm watching organizing for Palestine in ways that I've never seen before. And I haven't been alive that long, but it's been a pretty long time. But not that long. Not yet anyway. If you remember, there was this one Tuesday where the opposition thought that they could go outside, and they were like, we're doing a rally in support of Israel. Everybody come outside. And I said, you know, it's freedom of speech. This is the freedom of assembly. You go on out there and do your thing. And then I went into the little video and I started scrolling, looking around and seeing, you know, who's there, who came. It was white as snow, with a few little speckles in there. There was a couple of brown people and maybe 2 black people, but overall, the point is it was not diverse. And one of the most incredible things about the pro-Palestine solidarity movement is it looks like the America that I want to live in. It's beautiful, it's intersectional, it's intergenerational, it is multi-faith, it is people from the deep down south to the streets of Brooklyn, to Chicago, to Arkansas. You could find folks outside for Palestine in places and cities and towns I never even heard of. That's the beauty of the pro-Palestine solidarity movement. And you know what that tells you and what that demonstrates? Is that the values in the pro-Palestine solidarity movement, which is about full liberation for all people, is resonant, right? Because it's inclusive. It's welcoming of people. Why does our opposition not get that type of diversity? Because they're exclusionary, right? They are discriminatory. That's the concept in which the entire state of Israel was created upon. And so that's what I love. And just so we're all clear, just so you know, the people of Gaza, they know that. You don't think they see you when you're outside? They got smartphones too. The journalists got smartphones too. Yes, there's blackouts every once in a while, but trust me when I tell you that the people of Gaza have been profoundly moved by organizers in the US, in Canada, in the UK, in France, in Africa, everywhere. They see you. And you have been part of giving them that strength and resilience. And they in fact say maybe this is not all in vain. Maybe that this sacrifice that we're making is to help rejuvenate a pro-Palestinian solidarity movement that then gets to what we've been fighting for and our parents and great-grandparents been fighting for, which is a free Palestine. And of course, we don't ever want anyone to have to sacrifice those that they love, but we are also committed to making sure that's not in vain. And so it has been incredible, and it has been beautiful. But there's also been sad parts. 50,000 pregnant women in Gaza. Women and girls who have no access to basic needs like sanitary napkins. And the multi-million-dollar funded, quote, feminist organizations in America have been largely silent. Shame. Shame on you. And you know who they are. And the minute Donald Trump's running for office, you're going to get that email. And the email is going to say, emergency, emergency. Give us some more $1 million so we could continue to be corporate in our organizing, corporate in the way we fight for marginalized people. So we can only fight for the ones that, you know, the corporations won't be afraid to sponsor us. This is not okay. And if you are a member of any of these organizations, make your voice heard. Write their executive directors an email and say, I am disappointed in you. I expected more from you. Why are you not standing up for the women and girls of Palestine? Because that is not the kind of organization or the kind of movement that I want to be part of. I want to be part of a movement that fights for all people, all the time. And our organizations, not all of them, have been quite disappointing in my opinion. But you know who hasn't been? Always the most least resourced ones. You know, the ones like us that call it, you know, the ragtags, right? The ones that are the most effective, organized, the boldest and the bravest of every movement. Outside. Willing to sacrifice scholarships, willing to sacrifice everything their parents hoped that they wouldn't sacrifice. That's who's outside right now. And I am grateful to see the beauty of every human being that stands outside. And I'll end with this on this question. Sometimes we are in the situation where there's a rally or there's an event. And you say to yourself, you know, they're not going to miss me out there. Ain't nobody going to notice that I'm not there. And I keep explaining to people, here's what mass mobilization means. 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals mass mobilization. So you are one of the plus ones. And when you say no one's going to miss me, and you say no one's going to miss me, and you say nobody's going to miss me, then it is not mass mobilization. So do not ever underestimate your power, the power of your physical body showing up to these streets, because what you have done is shifted the narrative. The state of Israel has lost more support than they ever have ever because of you and because of your posts, because of you standing outside, because of your organizing. They have lost the propaganda war, which for them has been one of the most important wars that they've been fighting for 75 years. And they have lost it. They lost the whole war. But the propaganda war for sure. And it is because you all contributed to them losing that war.
Amazing, and we continue to contribute to that, which is amazing. So as a campaign strategist, Linda knows this very well about me, I'm always thinking about the strategy, what tactics are we going to employ to move our target, which in this case is the Biden administration, his supporters, members of Congress, etc., to do what we need them to do for calling for a ceasefire. Now we've seen the most creative sort of stunts and activations actually being mobilized for Palestine that we haven't seen in a long time. People literally, Jewish elders barricading themselves to the White House fence, people shutting down ports in Oakland, people literally doing whatever they can, hand chains, walking across the streets, walking for miles, for days. What kind of tactics, you said using your physical body is important, but there's so much to do even beyond sharing on social media and your physical body. What other tactics have you seen to be the most effective, and what we think is really driving a lot of the influence and the pressure that we saw in today, Senator Hall?
First, let me say this for the disclaimer. The whole ceasefire situation is important, and members of Congress calling for ceasefire, important. Senators calling for ceasefire, important. But it's also kind of shameful that we have to do that. And so please don't celebrate people that say ceasefire 108 days into a genocide. Like, that's the least that you can do, and actually shame on you that it took you this long. It took you 30 massacred and slaughtered on live stream for you to finally wake up and say, I think I might have to call for a ceasefire. Something Andy said was, it wasn't because Chris Van Hollen or any of these people, the recent ones, right, that called for a ceasefire, it's because they're doing it for political reasons. Because you put pressure on them and they're like, yo, I gotta get myself together because this is probably not gonna work for my re-election. But it ain't because they're good people. I just wanna make sure that we're clear about that. Do not celebrate these people. I wanna shout out our Jewish family, both in this room and outside this room. It takes a lot of courage to stand up against your own people. It really does. Sometimes, and we do this in our own Muslim communities, Arab American communities, Palestinian communities as well, depending on where we are in an issue. Sometimes you gotta go up against your own people. And it doesn't feel good, right? When it's people that you love. Sometimes they're in your own family, they might be your colleagues. And there are a lot of Jewish folks right now that are in our movements that are using everything that they have at their disposal. They're using their voices, they're risking relationships, they're risking jobs, to stand up and say, not in my name. You will not do this in my name. And it is incredibly powerful because it actually demystifies another myth that is out there, that somehow this is some sort of war between Jews and Muslims. And it is not, and has never been a war between Jewish and Muslims. That's not the context of the circumstances of the liberation of the Palestinian people, has never been about Jews and Muslims. First of all, we have a significant Palestinian Christian community, and everybody seems to erase them from the conversation. And they are a very critical part of what is happening, and when we say free Palestine, we also mean free the Palestinian Christians too. And so this has never been a religious issue. Of course, there are some Muslims, of course, and other Christians who are not Palestinian, who have deep, profound relationships to Al-Aqsa Mosque, to the Church of Nativity, to Jesus Christ, and to the stories that come out from the Holy Land. So there is that relationship, but it doesn't make it a religious issue. This is about colonialism, right? This is about the theft of the land of indigenous people. This is what this is about, okay? So we just want to make that very clear. And I've been watching direct action happen by intergenerational Jewish Americans. A lot of people say the young Jews, and the young Jews are outside, but it's intergenerational. There have been Jewish Americans who are now in their 70s and 80s that have been around a long time, standing in solidarity and fighting for the Palestinian people, and they're still outside. And I love them. And they give me hope. And guess what? The people in Gaza see them too. Young black organizers that got a lot to lose, who are organizing direct actions across this country, groups like the Dream Defenders in Florida, who have already lost funding for standing up for Palestine in the past, but still unapologetic and still outside. Watching direct actions in San Francisco, where you park your car on the bridge. This is, by the way, brilliant. You park your car on the bridge, coordinated, you stop the cars, and then what do? When they come and tell you drive the car off the bridge, you take your keys and you throw them into the river. Then it's a couple of more hours till you figure out how to get our cars off the bridge. This is the kind of sacrifice that people are making right now. It's kind of creative direct action. Because this is what happens. You got to do whatever you can with whatever you have. We were doing this. Op-eds and ads in the New York Times and the Washington Post. Sometimes people say, why the New York Times, why the Washington Post? Because they've been complicit. Yep. So what do? You use their platform against them. And you put ads in the New York Times that reflect our movements, including calling an end to genocide and calling for ceasefire and making sure that people know the facts of what's happening on the ground. And we got money too, and yes, we're paying for those ads. We'll put wraps around newspapers that get delivered to every member of Congress like they did at Amnesty. Yes, we're going to do that too, because sometimes you gotta use whatever's available to you. And you gotta organize teach-ins at your churches, at your social centers, at Busboys, at the local coffee shop in your community, at the library, in your school, after school, whatever you gotta do. There's always something for everybody to do. Because a lot of times people see activists and organizers, I don't need you to be outside 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Everybody got a life, you got a job, you got kids, you go to school, you got other responsibilities, but no one can say that every day I can't do one thing. Maybe that's giving $5 to an organization that is Palestinian-led, or given to a humanitarian organization that's going to be serving or is already serving the people of Gaza. Maybe that's making a call to Congress. Maybe that's making a call to your members of school boards and local city council who are also acting out and acting up in some places as well. All politics is local. And real power is about making sure those that represent you are aligned with your values. So it's not just members of Congress. Because remember, 435 members of Congress called for ceasefire. They really don't got power. That's just a political way to show support and solidarity and power for the Palestinian people, but they don't actually have power to do a ceasefire, if that makes sense. So that means we don't just need Congress, we need just local city council members and your local legislators and local folks in your community and people who claim to be leaders in your community also calling for ceasefire, to make sure that we continue to build this power beyond just this genocide and also, more importantly, beyond just a ceasefire.
Exactly. And increasing the political risk for them to continue to stay silent. What does that mean to our communities? How are we going to remember, never forget, etc.? One thing I wanted to uplift was just the power of art in this moment and culture, and how we've seen that take form across the country and around the world in different ways. People using art and sidewalk decals like we did, naming that US-made bombs were used in Gaza every 2 feet. You'd walk in front of the White House, or in Boston, or in Times Square in New York City, finding those key places of high traffic areas where you know you need to get people to see this imagery on a daily basis outside of their phones. That's gotta be mobilized too. So as you said, Linda, there's things that we can do anytime of any day that we have availability. But now we have a lot of youth in this room, and you touched base on university campuses. I actually think university campuses are a full-blown battleground right now. And this is a true inflection point here. It's going to set precedent to what social justice movements will look like in a year, in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, etc. And we're in a moment where we're seeing students being penalized, facing consequences for organizing, for speaking up, for posting on social media. There are organizations that are finding their photos, doxing them, doxing their family's information, trying to do everything they can to ensure that they don't get opportunities for pursuing jobs or careers or internships, etc. I just want to say, I don't know if my younger sister's in this room, but I'm going to shout her out, even though I know she would be mortified. But she got a offer to be an intern at the White House at the beginning, maybe end of October. Something she applied for 8 months prior at least. And she calls me and she tells me, I actually told Linda about this. She said, Isra, I got the job. And I go, oh my God, I'm so proud of you. She's a senior at Georgetown. And I said, well, what are you gonna do about it? And she goes, I know what I have to do about it, right? And I was like, yeah. You know, she's 20, like literally not even 22 years old. And she wrote one of the most profound and beautiful letters of decline to this job that I couldn't believe a college student, let alone a 21-year-old, knew how to do that. And knowing that it may affect her job prospects, who knows, right? There's a risk in all of this. But she wrote that and she was so proud, and we were all so proud. But that was, wow, I don't gotta teach my younger sister anything. She's teaching me things in this moment. And she's rising to the occasion, and then she continues to protest and call out. So we know that there are consequences, and we know that there are fears that are real, and we've seen the harassment. But what is your advice to the young people in this room, and even those that are young professionals, not just on college campuses, that are navigating this right now, other than have no fear, what can they tangibly look at and get as advice from you as a mentor in this moment right now?
I want to read you a very quick email that I got, and you'll figure out soon which university this is, because it'll be public that I'm there, but I'm just gonna give you an example. Hi Linda, wanted to let you know that there has been some backlash about the event from Zionist alumni of the college. They don't anticipate anything violent occurring, but wanted to know if you would be comfortable having 1 or 2 campus safety officers in the venue just to be safe. The overall student body is in large support of you and your work. The response was, I am comfortable with whatever the students are comfortable with. I do not want them to be over-policed. I am not afraid. And it's almost always people who stir trouble from outside, and once I get there, nothing happens. And it's always great and inspiring. Appreciate you bringing this to my attention. And the reason why I read that in response to Isra is that college students across the country. And just so you know, these young people are worried about my safety, but they're having the fights on the inside. And they're doing it in ways without much resources, with a lot of backlash, and they're still standing strong. Because what those young people understand is that there has never been a movement in America that has not been powered by students and college campuses across this country. The ending of South African apartheid happened at, the root of it was the college campus organizing, the faculty and the student groups and the student leaders across the country who got up and also took that type of backlash at that time. And what I tell young people all the time is that, and I say this even to myself as a person that's not so young, what kind of ancestor do you want to be? Right? You know, a lot of times when we're in organizing, I'm in many Black-led organizing space, and I'm always inspired by Black and Indigenous organizers who always kind of insert the inspiration of their ancestors. They use this terminology often about the ancestors. We are our ancestors' wildest dreams. And so I ask my Palestinian American community and those of you in this generation right now, will you be able to say that you were your ancestors' wildest dream? And will you also be able to say at another generation to come who looks back at you and says, those were my ancestors that I'm bringing into this room? And so in the time of darkness, when you feel like the whole world is against you, and I promise you, I have had so many days where I felt the same thing, where I would wake up in the morning and I'm like, look, I'm just gonna go outside. And I felt like nobody was with me. Sometimes even my own community. And there were times where I felt isolated too, where I felt like, could I do this? Could I do this by myself? And I said, you know what? Not only is there another generation coming that's counting on me, I also have ancestors to make proud. Because I'm not gonna let my ancestors' sacrifices go in vain. And so every time you're feeling, as a young person, that you're hesitant. You feel like you don't want to wake up, you don't want to face what's outside. I just want you to know that somebody before you did. And because they did, you are on that college campus and you are a degree and access to higher education. And so when you're moving on that college campus, even with all that noise that is around you, it is worth it, my friends. And still, even throughout all of this, we are not sacrificing anywhere near what our ancestors sacrificed before us. And that is what gives me courage every single day. Indigenous elders, when I went to Standing Rock, I remember, people asked me where I was from. You all know I'm from Brooklyn. That's a very important part of my identity. But I'm also Palestinian. And so in an indigenous space in the camp there, I was so moved by walking around the entire compound in Standing Rock, and all they had was tribal flags. Not a single flag from Mexico or Ghana or France or Canada, nothing. They had no flags of no nation states, except for upside down American flags and Palestinian flags flying across Standing Rock. When you went to, I have a photo of this. When I got to Standing Rock, the thing that welcomed me, and they didn't do this for me, this was already there before I got there, is a sign that said from Palestine to Standing Rock. Wow. That's the banner that welcomed you into Standing Rock. So when I was walking around and talking to people in Standing Rock, they would ask me where I was from, and I said I was Palestinian. So you're Palestinian? They dragged me into a tent and sat me with some elders. They told the elders, this sister's from New York City, but she's Palestinian. And the elders sat me down on the floor, and they were, listen here, let me talk to you. Without even me telling them anything, they basically said to me, listen, what you're doing is hard work. What you're doing is heartbreaking. But remember from our own struggle, that the work that you do today is not for tomorrow or next week or next month or next year. It's for 7 generations to come. And ever since I heard that from an elder in Standing Rock, it has changed my whole perspective. Because even when Dr. King got assassinated, and some of you need to refresh your memory and go listen to his last speech before he got assassinated, he already knew he was going to get assassinated. He knew his time was up. And he told the people, I see the promised land. That's what he said. He said, I see the promised land, but I may not get there with you. Right? So he knew that freedom is inevitable. Freedom was going to come. But he knew that he wasn't going to be there. But it still gave him satisfaction to know that what the civil rights movement was doing was maybe they wouldn't see the fruits of their labor, but their generations to come would. And that was enough to do the work now. So what I say to all of you in this room is this. I feel, in a way that I've never felt before, by the way, I feel close to a free Palestine. I don't know. Something about it, it's like visceral for me. I'm like, for the first time in my whole life, I feel it close. Like I feel like I can touch it, like it's right there. But even if something were to happen to me, and that I wouldn't experience traveling and going and living and sleeping and eating in a free Palestine, I know that another generation after me will. And that is the whole satisfaction that I need, that allows me and you to get up every day, because freedom is inevitable. And even if we don't experience it, at least somebody's going to say, God bless my ancestors. God bless those who fought for me before I was even born. And when they get to live in Palestine and thrive in Palestine, or people could move free in Palestine and people could move free in the United States of America, someone's going to say, that's because my ancestors did that. And I'm benefiting from the fruit of every tree that they planted for me. And you know what? That's all I need. But I do still kind of want to go to a free Palestine. But I'm okay.
God bless our sister Linda. This is so everyone. I'm going to ask you one more question before we open it to the audience, so I'm sure there are eager people who have questions for you. All right, Linda, I mean, this is all amazing. And inshallah, a free Palestine, we will all be able to come together, the Busboys and Poets that Andy's going to open up in Ramallah. Inshallah, here, I'm putting it out there. Whoa, franchise.
I call dibs.
But really, like, coming back to the context of the U.S., this moment, our country, man oh man, the whole world knows that our country is complicit, that our country is aiding and abetting election year. And we know that, like you said, all these politicians coming out now, it's because they see the finish line, they see what's coming. If they don't do something that they see the people and the constituents have been saying and crying out for. Majority of Americans have been calling for a ceasefire since end of October. Majority of Americans have been nonstop calling. Majority of Democrats, you can't deny it. What's our plan for the elections? What is November 2024? What do we need to do? How do we do it? We need Sister Linda to guide us. Not just you. We will be there with you, holding you up, but we definitely want to hear from you. What should be our plan this year?
I told Isra that, she was like, should we open up to questions? Are you cool with that? I was like, you know me, I'm spicy. Anybody can get up and ask me a question. I'm going to answer the question. But I was hoping nobody would ask me that one. My God, our country is a disaster. A whole democratic disaster. It really is. And I'm having a hard time. I really am. Because I love people and I love marginalized people. And I don't like to see people hurt and harmed. And so I'm having a hard time. I have one president who's in office who aids and abets genocide, who has no courage, hasn't been able to do some of the most substantial things that he promised in his campaign when he was running for office, who bypasses Congress to sell weapons to a nation that is engaging in a genocide. And I have another guy who's a fascist. Now, I know there are third-party candidates, and I'm not going to take that away from you because this is democracy. And we should be able to engage in a whole and full democracy. And so we're in a terrible situation. But what I will not allow the situation to do is keep me from the polls, because all politics is local. And all the things and the detrimental things that have harmed marginalized people in this country happen on your state legislator level and on the local level. And so don't let your frustration with this administration, this frustration with this presidential election, keep you at home. Go outside. And remember, there are people counting on us to go to the polls. And that the politics is personal and it's local. And so when we don't go to the polls for the top of the ticket, then you're leaving more harm on the table on the local level. And there are some incredible local politicians and local elected officials and local candidates who are running against bad local elected officials. There are people of color that are marginalized, come from communities and understand our pain and trauma and are going to do good by our communities. Because we've seen the progress when we've done that, when we put people in places like Chicago, when you elect people like Cori Bush and Summer Lee and Rashida Tlaib and hear things on the House floor you've never heard before in the last, God knows, since Congress has been there. And so right now my philosophy is all politics is local. And I want to make sure that people still are casting their ballot and casting their vote. When you go to the top of the ticket, you just got to have a much more courageous conversation with yourself. Really, it's a courageous conversation that we need to have. And I said this today, I said I will not allow people to gaslight me. I'm going to say Donald Trump is a fascist, and I'm also going to criticize Joe Biden. Like, you can't tell me either or. And you're not going to put the responsibility on me by telling me to be quiet and to be careful and not criticize this administration because you worry about him losing an election. Maybe you should tell him to get himself together and get on the right side of history. Maybe he needs to be careful. Maybe he needs to be the one that's doing something and not me and not everybody else in this room. And so, I don't know. I do know that in New Hampshire, some good news came out today, where, as you know, there was some sort of situation in New Hampshire where like Joe Biden is not on the ballot or some weird situation like that. And there's some organizers in New Hampshire that said we still want to, play in the primaries. And so they came up with a campaign to put ceasefire, to go and do a write-in campaign. Originally the party said that's not going to count. We're going to put it in what they call scattered pile. And then they challenged them. The announcement came out today that there will be a special counting spot just for those who write in ceasefire. So that's a great opportunity for creative direct action. And we're hoping that the people of New Hampshire step up and use that opportunity to make a very strong point in support of a ceasefire. But I don't have the whole answer, so that is what I'm basically trying to say, because our democracy, there's only this little bit left of democracy in this country, like that much. And the question really on the table is that, are we willing to have some short-term pain for some long-term gain? Are we ready to have no democracy at all? I don't know. Like, there's a lot of serious things to ponder. And the reason why even those questions should be a reflection of how flawed our democracy actually is. That the choices that you have are either a person that aids and abets a genocide and has other failures that's one, or someone that just so we're clear, would not have been any better on this issue at all, just so we're all clear. Like, let's just not be, oblivious to what could have happened. Not to say that it could have been worse or better, but the fact that he definitely would have been either at the same place or worse, just so we're clear. So I'm just still having that same conversation with myself right now, because I believe in responsibility. I believe in organizing strategically with strategy. It's not all based on emotion, my friends. It's not always about what we feel personally. And I've said this many times over the years, that sometimes the decision that I make is not about me. It's about people that I love that are around me and how this is going to impact them. So when I figure that out soon, very soon, I'll come back and tell you what I came up with.
And we will continue to advocate and call on local city councils. I know that Alexandria City Council is voting on a ceasefire resolution at their next meeting coming up. If someone wants to see me afterwards, I can get you information on how to speak up a public opinion for that. There are local city councils, there are mayors, there are governors, there are races that are really, really important to our communities. School board, please not just only go out there and vote, but also go run for these positions. We can organize for anybody that backs our opinions up and backs up policies that support our communities. I just want to say it's just so sad and frustrating and heartbreaking to know that BIPOC communities are always carrying the brunt and always dealing with the consequences of these politicians. It is horrifying, and for many of us that were born and raised in this country, that are our ancestors' wildest dreams of being here and doing everything in the way that you would imagine the American dream being reached, but then continuously feeling like we're not part of what American dream is, we're not part of this narrative, because they don't look at us as equals, and we're constantly carrying the brunt of their failures and their missteps. So I appreciate you. We don't look at you to carry all of us, but we look at you that we carry you, and we walk towards that finish line, that goal for, like you said, an equitable world for all. We love you. We're here standing in solidarity with you as you continue to tour the world and calling for a ceasefire and a free Palestine. Thank you, Linda, and we'll open up for questions right now. Okay, I see a lot of questions already. Andy, how do you want to do this?
I know there's going to be a lot of questions, but we have a little bit of a problem. And the problem is that we have open mic on Mondays at 8 o'clock in this very room. And it's packed. All right, there's like 80 people. So
Just 40 minutes.
In 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
So here's the deal.
Can you use the mic, Andy? Because it's hard to hear.
First of all, wow. I think this may be the best speech I've ever heard. I really do.
I think the best of us.
Exactly, she saved it for us. So here's the deal. So we have an open mic that's going to be starting in about a half hour, and it's going to fill up this room. And it happens every Monday, so we didn't like plan it this way, just every Monday at 8 o'clock. So what we can do is have time for maybe 3 questions to be asked at the same time, like one after another, and then have kind of like a 5-minute response at the most. And then we're going to ask Linda to go out there. We've set up a table for her to sign books. And if you can line up in the bookstore, between like the aisles of the books. And if you just, hang out, we don't mind that at all. We love you all. So then we would have a chance to be able to make this work. So in about 10 minutes, everybody's going to get up. And we're all going to quietly walk off to the side. We're going to take Linda from the back probably, to get to the table where she's going to be signing the books. And she has 2 beautiful books here. If you haven't bought them, please do, and support local independent bookstores. So.
Mention that we got 3 great servers that have been working hard in this room, and that they want to get their checks done.
In this kind of situation, because they want to get around, they don't want to disturb you. It's a little bit complicated, so please take care of them. Close your checks and make sure that you walk in that direction.
And tip well, please.
Tip well. All right, so we have time for. So we're going to do 3. All right. You really have your hands up, so we're going to hit you up there. So we have, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? So that's it. So make it short, please, no speeches.
Hi, Linda. So I see the root cause, and I want your response to what I'm saying. The root cause of Palestinian American, our cause, and other marginalized people's causes are not being addressed by our politicians. If you look under the hood and really want to get to the root cause, it's campaign finance reform. Like, I'm wondering, should we as a community be focused much of our efforts around that issue?
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. My name is Asina Borna. I'm from Gaza, and I've had 22 of my family members be killed in this war so far. And I've had the Il Borna Mosque be demolished in Gaza, and I've had my ancestors' graves be desecrated in Gaza. I also work for Islamic Relief USA, and we are a large humanitarian organization, and I work in their public affairs department. And I do their advocacy campaigns. And we've been telling people for 100 days, call your senators and your congressmen and write them. And I wanted you to clarify something for us, because you said even if they all voted for a ceasefire tomorrow, they would not be able to create a ceasefire. So I wanted to clarify that a little bit, and should we be continuing to tell people to, phone bank and do all those good things?
Again, I tip my hat to you and to every Palestinian. You're amazing. And so are every Palestinian. My question is, when my congressman says that he cannot vote for a ceasefire because anyhow the Republicans are going to vote against it, and so we're going to lose the fight, so what's the point of voting? What would your response to him?
And you're the last one.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Jack, and I've been trying to think about how to articulate this question, but I think what comes to mind during all these mass movements is after Black Lives Matter summer in 2020, a lot of white organizations, a lot of white folks were like, oh my gosh, this is such a big deal, we're going to put BLM in our Instagram profile, we're going to invest in all these DEI initiatives, X, Y, and Z, and like all these big promises. A lot of that money doesn't exist anymore, those programs have suddenly disappeared. So my question to you is, how do we as marginalized folks stop looking to like white institutions, that are rooted in white supremacy, to like keep this momentum going and stop relying on them to be like the bearer of like how this keeps going? So like, how do we support one another as marginalized folks?
I'm ready to go in. First of all, thank you for all of you that asked me a question. They're all incredibly important questions, so I'm going to start back there. Campaign finance reform, and I'm just going to get a little spicy about that. The bottom line here, folks, is that most of the members of Congress who are not calling for ceasefires because they're funded by AIPAC or those that are like AIPAC. So let's be clear. The special interest groups in this country, pharmaceutical industry, fossil fuel industry. So when you look at people who are not doing the right thing on climate, it's because of the fossil fuel industry. When they're doing things that are against healthcare or equalizing healthcare, it's the pharmaceuticals. When they're acting out on Palestine, it's because there's AIPAC type funding behind them. So campaign finance reform really does tie a lot of these issues in. So I think that there is a way for us to consolidate some of our movement work, not to take away from the work that we're doing, but to also join in this larger effort. But it's not like, the reason why the movements don't do it, because it's kind of, people think it's boring. Like, oh, campaign, let's reform campaign finance. But in fact, it's a critical issue, and I think you bringing it into the space, I think, is important, and it definitely needs to be part of the larger strategy as we work towards our goals. To my friend Asid, first of all, I love you, Asid. Thank you so much for being here. It's hard sometimes for people like you to even be in spaces like this, but I hope you found it healing just to be in a space where people who love you and pray for you and your family and all those in Gaza. This may be controversial because a lot of, including my own organization, by the way. So I'm criticizing my own organization now. People are still on the ceasefire thing. And it's important because it gives us and our movement something to focus on. It gives us a goal. It gives us something to unite around. But we're 108 plus days into a genocide. And so, yes, you keep calling your members of Congress, not because saying ceasefire is going to get us a ceasefire. It's about showing power, right? It's about making sure that you do not let these members of Congress go to bed at night without getting those hundreds of calls every day that they should get. That their constituents are calling them because they're thinking about Gaza and thinking about Palestinians every single day. So it's more like a haunting thing, like we're haunting them. I want you to be haunted every day by the hundreds of calls that you get saying, I am a voter in your district and I wake up every day horrified by what's happening in Palestine. And as my representative, the least that you can do is call for a ceasefire or you will never ever get my vote ever again. That's really what we're doing. And so to clarify, members of Congress do not have power in this situation. It's really, again, more about consolidating power and pressuring the United States president by saying, oh my God, 350 members of Congress are calling for ceasefire. Many of them are members of my party. I think I need to get myself together. That's really what the point of it is. It's more of a symbolic, and also for the historical record. There's a resolution, and 100 years from now, people are going to look back and they're going to be like, damn. You got 435 members of Congress and only 70 of them called for ceasefire. So hopefully members of Congress also know it's for the historical record. And for those of you who haven't said ceasefire, you will be in the dustbins of history, just so that they know. Tell them that I said that too. And you also asked a great question related to that, which is, what do you tell your senator or your member of Congress that says, well, even if I do vote for the ceasefire resolution, the Republicans are going to vote against it anyway. In fact, some of his Democratic members of Congress might vote against it anyway. I would say to him, you don't worry about anybody else, worry about you. Where do you want your name recorded in history? Do you want to be someone who stood up against the bloodshed in Palestine? Do you want to be the one that's on the right side of history? Or do you want to be on the wrong side of history? So this is more of a personal responsibility and an individual responsibility for your representative versus them doing what politicians love to do best, which is push blame on everybody else but themselves. I didn't ask you about your friend down the block. I asked you, are you willing to be on the right side of history and stand with your constituencies and stand with voters? And remember, this resolution is archived. This is for the historical record. 500 years from now, if there's still a United States of America, somebody's going to pull up that resolution and they're going to be able to know who signed and who did not sign that resolution. And hopefully your member of Congress decides to be on the right side of history. My friend, you just opened a little wound for me here. Because this is unfortunately the cycle of our movements, and it bothers me deep in my core. If you remember in 2020, all of a sudden, Target was like, Black Lives Matter. come buy a shirt that says Black Lives Matter from Target. And money poured into the Black Lives Matter movement, mostly in the brand of the Black Lives Matter movement, okay? And it became trendy. It became like the thing. And the white people were outside, and they were like, oh, we can say Black Lives Matter now, because now everybody's saying Black Lives Matter. And when everybody's saying something, you know something is wrong. Now just remember that. Something is wrong, because even when there will be a free Palestine, there will still be people in opposition to it. So what happens? People pour money, the white foundations pour money into the black groups, and then it's not trendy anymore, right? Then what do? We leave the organizations who are working, and were working with little or no resources before that, and now we leave them out to dry. And there are actually some black-led organizations, especially some of the smaller ones, some who shut down their doors because they couldn't sustain the work. We've done this before. When Donald Trump was in office and the babies were getting separated from their mothers at the border, everybody was like, keep the families together. The white foundations came up with that. Imagine what that was. The people supported this, by the way. I was like, this is weird. Keep families together where? In the cages? Is that what you wanted? Is that what you hashtag? That we didn't want to do. Not only we were saying, don't take the mothers from the babies, right? Because you were putting them in separate camps. The children were away from. But you were like, keep them together in the cages. We got to be smart about how we organize, who is setting our agenda forward, and what we are calling for. And not being, and this is why it's important, this is a decision that I've made in my life, and I talk to organizations all the time, and I'm part of many of these organizations. I'm very clear about what kind of money I take, okay? Because that's important. And even if you do take money from a foundation that may have maybe some questionable history, which probably is all of them, you have to be able to dictate and say, just so we're clear, this is who I am and this is what I'm going to do, okay? Because if we put our movements in the hands of corporations or in the hands of philanthropy, we're going to lose every time. Because there are boxes that have been created for us and we are not allowed to go outside of the box. And that is the importance of funding our own movements. Because our people have been taught, you don't got money. You don't have money. We don't have rapport. We come from marginalized communities. We don't have the resources. And I say to people all the time, and I remember one of my colleagues, my son, the General, he's a hip hop artist from the Bronx. One time a lady on Cash App at Untold Freedom gave us $5. And she made a comment. You know how you can make a little comment for what it's for? Or actually, it was on Venmo. She gave us $5. And you know what she said? She said, that's all I got. And you know what my son told me to write back to her, because you could comment back on Venmo. He said, tell her, what you got is all I need. And I say to people all the time, what are we willing to sacrifice for our movements? And one thing that I'll let you move with today as we start heading out of this room here is I stopped drinking I used to drink Starbucks, I'm not gonna lie, because my kids got me into it and they go and they get it for me and I was like, all right. But I don't drink Starbucks anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
And sometimes I still get myself a nice cup of coffee from a local coffee shop, because there's plenty amazing ones. You could come to Busboys. I just came from Detour Coffee. If you haven't been there in Arlington, amazing. Anyhow, my point is that we do got resources. What if every week we said, I'm going to put $5 and I'm going to give my $5 a week, which is $20 a month, to a black-led organization in Washington, D.C., Harriet's Dreams. Or I'm going to give $20 a month to the Gathering for Justice. Or I'm going to give $20 a month to Code Pink. Or I'm going to give $20 to JVP. Or to the U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights. Or I care about humanitarian issues, so I'm going to give $20 a month to Islamic Relief. Or to whoever, I don't care what the organization does. Climate justice, reproductive rights, whatever the issues that you care about. We can fund our own things. And so for me, my to all of us is, can we fund our own movements? Can we fund our own organizers? So that we don't have to worry about the corporations walked away. Philanthropy said you're being too controversial, because you know damn sure well after the ceasefire, they're going to be pulling our renewals left and right. Because right now they don't want to do it because they know it's controversial to pull money, while it's But once your year is up, they might come back with a nice little email that says, thank you so much for your work over the years. Unfortunately, we have some circumstances that will not allow us to fund you again in the next year. That's gonna happen. And the question is, are we willing to step up and fill up the gap? Because we are capable of doing that. These organizations are working on $20,000 grants, $30,000 grants. Guess what? We could do a fundraiser for a Black-led organization right here at Busboys, and I promise you I could raise $30,000 in the room right now if I wanted to. That's the kind of person I could get you to put your hand in your pocket and get out $30,000. But anyway, we're not going to do that today. But my point is that we have to come in this, and the Black Panther Party was a great example of that, right? So we do have examples in the past of communities and organizations that were formed that were self-sufficient and independent, which is why they wanted to take out somebody like Fred Hampton. They said, how dare you, young man, think you could independently organize and go up against the status quo and feed people breakfast and provide human services and social services and house the houseless. Right now in Ohio, Reverend Jamal Bryant from Georgia is funding the legal fees of a pastor in Ohio who's using his church to house the homeless in negative degree weather in Ohio. Imagine this is the country that we live in. So anyway, that's the kind of solidarity that we need. Jamal Bryant is in a mega church in Georgia. He said, don't you worry, pastor. You go on out there in that court and you fight hard. That's the kind of solidarity that we need in the movement. So I just want to say to every single person in this room, you are incredible, you are amazing, you are the only hope that I have in this country. And like James Baldwin said, as much as I criticize this country, as much as I am horrified by its behavior from the days of its founding, there's still something about this country that I love because I believe in its potential and you are that potential. And we are going to make this country at some point the greatest nation on our earth, and that's going to require us believing in ourselves and in our power and our independent power to make this nation worthy not just of us, but of marginalized people all over the world, because everybody is looking to us. And right now, it's a little shameful, but I do believe that one day people are going to look and say, God bless America, because America is the greatest nation on earth, and I want to be alive when people around the world and here say that. And I know that we're going to be able to do that soon. So I appreciate you all. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Busboys.
You said when I was going to be here, you said I want to be in a healing place, and you said when you're on a healing place. I want to say a very special thank you to our poet, Omar Abed. You were amazing. You really moved us. Thank you so much. His father is standing right there videotaping the whole thing. I want to thank Mr. Shakir, who did an incredible job with her interview. Thank you so much. And of course, Linda, very powerful.